I always get the question of, where did you folks come from? I always answer is that we've always been here. And I've been taught as a young boy by my uncles and grandparents and fathers that we've been here since time immemorial.
Ketchikan was actually founded originally as a summer fish camp for the Tlingit people, who are the first people of our area, where they would come in the summer and camp along the shores of the creek, catch fish to dry for winter food.
The first Anglo people came here in the 1880s and 1890s, primarily because of that fishing stream, looking at how they could exploit it.
It was during the gold rush that is widely believed to kind of kicked off Ketchikan as a community, where folks coming up noticed how rich the creek was full of fish and how much salmon there was. And rather than continue on up north to the gold fields, decided that maybe this was where they would make their fortunes.
Ketchikan's gone through four different phases. And it's watched the three previous phases basically be dominant and then crash. And unlike a lot of places where the industry goes away, the town hasn't. The first phase was mining. And mining was a big industry here probably till World War I. Then it went away. It was replaced by salmon canning.
In the 1930s, Ketchikan was canning more salmon than just about anywhere in the world, which is why we have the nickname Salmon Capital of the World.
My mother used to say that it was the smell of money because the place really reeked when the canneries were all operating, but basically that kept the economy alive. Unfortunately, as a territory, we allowed the federal government to have control of that, and they allowed fish traps and it basically wiped the runs out.
And then came timber, Ketchikan Pulp Company. Then we became a year-round community.
And for half a century, from the 40s to the 90s, we were the major timber producer in the state of Alaska, this area.
So when I was very young, the pulp mill kind of dominated the economy here with, I would say, at least half of the economy centered around that.
But after logging got bumped off, it hurt this town so bad because they relied on the logger. They relied on the truck drivers, the tugboat operators, the petroleum people that sell petroleum, the pulp mills, the sawmills. It just devastated this town, and a lot of people were going, "Wow, we've lost 2,000 or 3,000 families."
So we've gone through, three previous booms and busts. And hopefully we're not looking at that this time.
It can be easy to miss the moment when a tide starts to turn. You can't often tell which wave was the first to mark when the ocean's inertia shifted, but with time, it's undeniable that a change has truly happened. Sometime in the summer of 1970, in the morning, the Alaskan town of Ketchikan's early history ended. On that day, a ship emerged from the dawn fog in the Tongass Narrows. It was the SS Arcadia, a former ocean liner of P&O Lines, now used to run cruises from the American West Coast. This certainly was not the first ship to visit Ketchikan, and it definitely was not the first passenger ship, and it wasn't even the first cruise ship, but it still did represent the turning of the tide for the town. Previous cruise ships that tied up to Ketchikan's cleats were small vessels, carrying only 1 or 2 or a few more hundred passengers. This, though, the SS Arcadia, was a behemoth.
And here was all of a sudden this boat parked in the harbor that was, 8 or 9 stories high, actually had the huge number of 1,200 passengers, which to us is a small boat. But in those days, it was completely shocking to us.
With that, Ketchikan's path was set. Cruising would be its future, its phase number 4. Over the following summer cruising seasons, each grew larger than the last, and the town started to change.
People who had not had a whole lot of interest in the tour industry suddenly realized, wow, we have thousands of people showing up in town.
In the scale of days, the changes were slow, but in the scale of years, they were lightning fast. The relentless forces of time and money responded to the arrival of these megaships and transformed the physical structure of Ketchikan itself. That's because each and every person in the town started asking themselves a question.
how do I, as a person, take advantage of that? How can my business exploit that? How can I take advantage of the fact that thousands of people come to my town and they're looking for entertainment, they're looking to be able to purchase things, they're looking for, a good time for, the 6 hours they're here. How can I take advantage of that?
The answer was this.
Hello, good morning, Princess Cruise Lines. Welcome to Ketchikan. Oldest bar, coldest beer, homemade Bloody Marys. Come on down. Come and pet the happy bears. From the first part of May to the last day of September, Ketchikan's crazy, and it is tourism.
A typical Monday like today is, last year, we'd have probably 5 ships in. The first one would usually be the Norwegian Joy at berth 3 with almost 5,000 passengers, and they usually would arrive between 6 and 6:30, and people would be streaming off between 6:30 and 7.
There's operators with their dock signs running all up and down. You see hundreds of people in a line, either getting onto motor coaches or waiting outside of other tour operator venues.
We'd have the Royal Princess, another Neo-Panamax ship down at berth 4, with between probably 3,000 and 4,000 passengers.
So we could have thousands of people downtown, and we could have people all over the sidewalks and people in the stores and on the trails and in the tours.
We'd have the Coral Princess at 1, we'd have the Volendam at 2, and the Seven Seas Mariner at anchor, and tendering folks in probably to berth 3. Maybe 12,000 passengers in a town of 8,500 and a community of about 14,000. All here for about 7 or 8 hours.
So it would be very, very busy, and there would be quite a bit of noise in this room that we're in right now, which is a tour center that we operate. The docks would be full of people and tour buses and tour guides holding up signs so that the passengers can find them as they walk down the gangways.
You're hearing yelling, laughter, cheering. You're hearing the horns from the cruise ships.
You would see crossing guards and port security personnel directing people. And again, the noise from the float planes flying by and musicians on the dock when we have concert. It's a very lively, active place.
To host on a day where we might have 14 or 15,000 passengers can be quite a challenge. You have to coordinate the traffic with all the tour buses and float planes. You have to coordinate all the people that are getting off these ships and walking around. But yeah, it's a big team effort basically to keep things moving in such a small community, being almost double in population on the busiest days.
Imagine if, all of a sudden, your hometown's population doubled. It had twice as many people to feed, to transport, to entertain, to care for. Imagine the congestion, the conflict, the chaos. Ketchikan doesn't have to imagine. It's what they do every day for 4 months, year after year after year, and yet they make it work. They have reinvented a sleepy fishing, mining, and lumber town into a finely tuned tourism machine.
So over the years, the way the downtown Ketchikan area has been developed to support tourism, we've increased our docks downtown. We've increased some of our open spaces. We've added tourist destinations like a major library, a major museum. And then, of course, you've got all the private businesses that cater to tourism that really didn't exist in Ketchikan years ago. So it's kind of transformed that area into almost like an Alaska Disneyland.
And so you saw businesses built around new tours, businesses built around new services offered to tourists, businesses built around many more charter fishermen who take the tourists out. The charter fleet has grown significantly. And so with that, then, you have an economy that certainly shifted as a result of the growing business in the tourist industry.
It works because a lot of people make it work. I think a lot of people have put in a lot of time and effort to make this work.
This is Hong Kong. It is the 38th busiest cruise port in the world. This is Genoa, the 37th busiest in the world. And this is Naples, the 36th. This is Ketchikan. It is the 35th busiest cruise port in the world. This town, no larger than Yankton, South Dakota, or McPherson, Kansas, or Scottsboro, Alabama, has built itself into one of the most proficient, active, and sought-after destinations in the world. As a town, Ketchikan is David. As a destination, it's Goliath. But giants, too, can fall.
On December 30th, China reported an outbreak of respiratory diseases in Wuhan, China. We're very concerned about this because it's attributed to a new coronavirus, and that's a disease that we haven't seen before.
无特殊原因，市民不要离开武汉。机场、火车站、离汉通道暂时关闭。
All across China, communities are sealing themselves off.
It has not yet become a global health emergency. It may yet become one.
A small number of cases of the new coronavirus have now been detected in other countries, including Thailand, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and the United States.
Of all cases outside China, more than half are among passengers on the Diamond Princess cruise ship.
If we have contracted it, I want to know. I certainly don't want to infect my friends and family back in England. Let's get it sorted ASAP out here.
だけどこのクルーズの中は地域の感染の濃縮した感じと考えたらいいと思うんですね。
We will be back in the UK in 13 days and all will be fine.
We now have a name for the disease, and it is COVID-19.
We are both positive. We're going to a hostel because there isn't a hospital bed anywhere around.
For the past 2 days, the number of new cases reported in the rest of the world has exceeded the number of new cases reported from China.
Il dato complessivo delle persone colpite dal coronavirus è di 374 unità, con un incremento di 52 persone.
We are planning for the likelihood of a significant outbreak of coronavirus in the weeks to come.
The sudden increase of cases in Italy, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the Republic of Korea are deeply concerning.
À l'échelle nationale, tous les rassemblements de plus de 1000 personnes sont désormais interdits.
This is going to become a much more significant outbreak than it currently is.
And it will have huge impacts on a number of things. It will have huge impacts on travel. It will have a negative impact also on our economy, which, as we all know, is in a very, very precarious situation.
As of this morning, there were 712, I believe, with 27 deaths. Guaranteed by the time of this evening, that's going to be up.
It's scary. It really is so scary to see what is happening.
There was panic coming through the phones on the floor, traders just trying to rush to get to the point of sale to get rid of their stock.
There is no doubt that there will be more cases.
How many people in this country will become infected, and how many of those will develop more complicated disease?
We're deeply concerned. We have therefore made the assessment that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
When I first heard that the coronavirus was a pandemic, I didn't know the impacts. I had no awareness of how that would affect our community and our industry. In fact, I was probably in an ignorant state at that point. But when the CDC came out and issued the no-sale order, that's when it became very real for me, and then the discussion started happening throughout the industry.
I think when the Diamond Princess flared up so badly, we knew then that this was not going to be a good situation. We weren't sure exactly how long it was going to take to disrupt the market up here. But yeah, it was recognizable that it was going to be an issue.
Well, there certainly was a lot of media coverage about that, and I think people were pretty concerned about what the impacts were going to be all around the world as things started to develop. It led ultimately to the industry implementing a voluntary suspension of service in March, and they've been suspended pretty much until now. At least in the U.S., still continue to be suspended until the end of October.
It was a gut punch, but it was kind of surreal because, is it really going to happen? Is it going to be the whole season, or are we just talking about, a month or two?
And I don't think there was anyone that really saw the whole season being canceled, when that first order came. It was like, surely we can find a workaround, we can mitigate the impacts. And month after month, and then it finally dawned on us that no, it really isn't going to happen.
If I, come on and into your bar and told you in January that you would have 0 cruise ship passengers this summer,
I would have told you to fuck off and die. I would have said, have you lost your fucking mind? If you would have came and told me we're not going to have any cruise ships this summer, I would have looked at you like you were an alien. I would have said, what in the hell are you talking about? We're not going to have any cruise ships. I would have called you a liar, just flat out. You don't know what you're talking about. And guess what? You knew everything you were talking about.
You see the sign right there?
Yeah.
This was the Dirty Dungy, and that's the restaurant. They specialized in crab and halibut, and it's no more. They've gone out of business. I think they weren't doing the business that they thought they were going to do, and then when this hit, it was just. This is Kim Kirby. She's also in tourism, and we're doing a documentary on the impact of the pandemic on the state of Alaska.
Very quiet.
Economically.
Really nice. Very quiet. No money, but very quiet.
Thanks, Kim. Okay. So the Dirty Dungy, and then we have the Harley motorcycle tour that operated out of there. They, I don't think they're coming back this year. I'm not this year. I don't think they're ever coming back. And then, of course, there's the Arctic Bar. That's the oldest bar in town. And I'm sure Paula's gonna be able to make it through this, but I think even the Arctic Bar has got a challenge here. This is our new boat, and we bought it here locally. And we were very excited about the opportunity to take people out whale watching and also to take them over to our new facility on Gravina Island. It's, again, we thought we were going to have the best season of our whole entire 15 years of operation. And it definitely has been the worst. It's even worse than our very first season. We call them insaners because if you look up at the end of that boom, you see the big round block. That's what they use to pull their nets in. And they're big, heavy rope nets, and you hope to pull a fish. But as they start to pull them in, it begins to tip the boat over. So they use these smaller skiffs, these workboats, to pull in the opposite direction to keep the boat from going completely over. We are headed to a place called, Gravina Island is the name of it. It's the Bridge of Nowhere, the Bridge to Nowhere. People have started calling it Nowhere, at least parts of it. And if you look, it's actually not nowhere, it's where our international airport is located. You can see the tarmac, see right ahead, that's part of our airport there. This is where we were gonna have our commercial facility. You can see all the building materials for the main building back past the tree line. You can see the pilings, but no, there's really not much of a marina, and there's no gangway or pier. We pretty much had to just shut down the whole project due to the pandemic. But we do have this for now, and the few tours that we've been able to operate from here, we've done with just 3 inflatables. Hopefully next year we can at least have our gangway and marina finished and a little, maybe some restrooms and maybe a small snack shack, and that's paid for. But we may have to sell those to help to get through the winter. And this is Hatch, a 13-year-old. He's working on his captain's license, but you have to be 18 for that. He's been helping out most all his life with this company. We're gonna keep this just like this. And we own all the way almost to that orange barricade right there. But this we're gonna keep pristine. It's just a neat spot. Well, all we're really planning to have is we'll have a pier coming out off a building where those rocks are. There'll be a 20 by 30 building, and then a pier about 100 feet long,
that'll drop down to a 75-foot gangway that'll end up on those floats. And we'll have a few more floats, hopefully next year. And then in the building, we'll basically run our tours from the beach. I'm Tab McNabb, and I own a tour company in Ketchikan, Alaska called Ketchikan Outdoors. My wife and I, too, together.
And I'm Hack, I'm their son.
I'm Sarah McNabb, Tab's wife, and we're the owner-operators of Ketchikan Outdoors.
It's an outdoor adventure tour company that was started in 2006 by Sarah and I, and started out really small. We had one boat, we had a B&B in town, and we offered fishing and sightseeing, kayaking, snorkeling, just a little bit of everything. It was a whole lot of fun, but we only had about 35 guests or customers that first summer.
Well, the growth was extraordinary. We started out with 3 boats, and Tab had a friend who wanted to spend the summer in Alaska, and we both had full-time jobs elsewhere. So we kind of gave it to him and said, see what you can do with this. We rented a little place downtown. And that summer we took some really good footage of some of the tours we were able to get out. And the next year, or that fall, Princess and Norwegian decided to pick us up. So immediately we had to purchase that summer 12 new boats. And to do so, we mortgaged our homes. We
maxed our credit cards.
Scraped, and Tab sold firewood, and then the next summer, some more cruise lines picked us up, so we had to have more boats. This was going to be our biggest summer yet. We were like days before this hit, we were about to purchase a big building on Creek Street and really almost, I would say, double what we were going to do and add. We probably would have added about 10 to 15 more jobs. So everything just ground to a halt, seriously.
Last year, 2019, we had right at 10,000 guests take our different tours, and that's from mostly like Sarah said earlier, that's from mostly the cruise ships. But this year, we were right at 11. Just 11, not 11,000 or 1,100. So quite a big change. The impact of the lack of the tourist dollars in the community it's way beyond tour companies. I mean, we spend a lot of money in town to be able to make our company happen, and at the grocery store and at the marine stores and the gear shops and the gas stations, and then we pay our local employees, and then they're spending the money that they're making in town. So it's really deep, way beyond the surface of just a tour company losing revenue.
You're interviewing Paula?
We are.
She is one of my favorite people ever. She was my first visitor when Hatch was born.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she brought me these little leather moccasins.
I'm a little bit of the glue. I'm not the super glue, but I'm a little bit of the Elmer's glue to keep it going. I like people coming, say somebody, they've lost their luggage on the airplane, it hasn't made it here. I'm the helper. I'm the one that wants to make sure that they're having a good time. I'm the one that wants to make sure everything's going smoothly. I like smooth. Yeah, if it's chaotic for somebody, that's going to affect me too. I want them to have a safe, good time. I don't want no problems. Paula hates problems. I just want everything smooth sailing. It took me off guard, that question. Yeah, what's my role? Yeah.
I will tell you, she's everybody's go-to. Somebody needs something in this town, especially financially. Somebody's got a sickness that they need money fundraised for, or a birthday party, or whatever it may be, they go to this one.
I came up to go to a wedding, and I stopped at Seattle Pike Street Market and got fake ID because I was only 17. And I came to Alaska and went to a wedding in Craig, Alaska, and they needed a bartender, so I became a bartender. And I was over there for 8 years and then 8 glorious years, and then came back over here to Ketchikan. I started working here at the Arctic Bar 35 years ago. Owned it 22 now, and it's home of the Happy Bears. The bar is 83 years old. It's the 9th oldest bar in the whole state of Alaska. I'm pretty proud of it. And yeah.
My name is Joe Williams Jr., and I'm a tour guide. I work for a small company called Where the Eagle Walks, which is my company. I provide historical walking tours in Ketchikan for the visitors that come to Ketchikan. It was fulfilled a need. A small cruise company needed somebody to do walking tours, and they asked me. I gave them 2 weeks. 29 years later, I'm still doing it. Long 2 weeks. I think I'm the only one in the business that does not look forward to the end of the season coming. No way could my business be viable without the cruise ship, the visitor industry. Just no way. I have absolutely 100% every day doing tours for the visitor industry during the summer months. This summer, did not have one tour.
About 90% of our business comes from the cruise ships.
I'd say almost 95. It's been remarkable this summer and I think a lot of, the independent travelers decided not to come anyway because we did have quite a few of those, but yeah, I'd say about 95%. It's huge.
Without the cruise ships, this wouldn't be a sustainable business.
I'm not sure how I'm going to make it financially during the winter months. I am a retired person, but still, retirement payments generally are so small, and it doesn't play a major role. But I'm going to learn how to live within that.
No, it was horrible. That shutting down, I mean, you might as well have taken a knife and stabbed me in the back as shut my bar down for 7 weeks and 3 days. I mean, I could have tears right now. It totally affected us. And I wasn't even thinking the money-wise. I was just thinking, they aren't gonna have anywhere to go. Everybody's gotta be stuck in their houses. Quarantine. I'm so sick of hearing fucking quarantine, I could just, and that's the truth. I understand why, but don't have to like it. Yeah, without tourism, without tourism, we really aren't complete. I don't know how else to put it. We need the tourism. We need those tourists. I need those cruise ships. I want those cruise ships back immediately, which can't happen, so I will settle for next May. But we need them. We have to have them to survive.
When the virus was first announced, I've absolutely had no idea what the meaning of that was. It wasn't until the United States, out of Seattle, I should say, made the announcement that they're cutting all cruise ships out of Seattle. That's when, in my heart and mind, I said, oh dear, that's going to direct affect me. Now, the things that I have planned financially must be put on hold. And I must begin to think on being able to live on a minimum amount of money.
I totally remember when it totally hit me that, because I kept hearing people would say, Paula, things are changing, things aren't going to be the same. It's like, what are you talking about? Things aren't going to be the same. Because I don't like change. Paula doesn't like change. So to stay away from it is what I like. Kara, my partner that owns a bar with me, she came to me one day and she said, she, in a nice way, tried to slowly try and get me focused on things are going to be a little different now. It's like, different? What do you mean different? And well, this pandemic, I said, what's a pandemic? And she said, well, this coronavirus. I said, that's not real. No, Paula, it's real. Something's happening with it. And I'm like, okay, when it knocked my dick in the dirt, when it fucking nailed me was when I realized that there weren't going to be any cruise ships. That totally, wow. No cruise ships, no tourists, no, and when they shut us down for 7 weeks and 3 days, that almost fucking killed me. Yeah, that was not good. You try and keep hope, but you just don't know what's gonna happen. The unknown is scary for Paula. totally scary.
You know, we've actually talked about that before, and it was more like a what if, how crazy would that be? Like, what if the cruise ships just didn't show up? You know, how devastating would that be to our town and our family and everything? And we just kind of would laugh that off like that was impossible.
And then it actually happened.
And then it actually happened.
Each summer, the world passes through Ketchikan. Each fall, though, it resets, returning to a more isolated, insulated state. This part-time detachment is what lures some people to stay. The residents of Ketchikan are used to hearing about, but not experiencing, the world's problems. The political turmoil in Washington, police brutality in Minneapolis, wildfires in California, to the people of Ketchikan, these can seem like irrelevant dispatches from a far-off land. Instead, their local paper is filled with city council coverage, wedding announcements, and high school baseball scores. But then, the headlines changed. We don't know how, we don't know when, we don't know where, but we do know that the genetic sequence of a coronavirus mutated into a novel, deadly, easily communicable strain. It was then brought to the Hunan seafood wholesale market, where it began its spread, seeping out first from these walls, then from Wuhan, then from Hubei, then from China, before rippling across the entire world. Some months later, and 5,000 miles away, the people of Ketchikan saw their lives fundamentally changed. The result of misfortune in a place they'd never been, and negligence by people they'd never met. Ketchikan has faced challenges before, but this time, it's different. This time, the reason why their ports sit empty is the same reason why bars in New York are closed, why rugby games in South Africa are without fans, or why Australia's borders are shut. Ketchikan's isolation is no more. This summer, the world stopped passing through, but its problems came to stay.
And our oyster sales, I think, probably like the restaurant trends, declined probably 90 to 95% of what they were a year ago. So it's been pretty dramatic loss in revenue.
Well, the simple way to put it is we are bouncing around 50%, half of our normal volume from a normal summer.
We hire seasonally locally for TAC-1 Air, and we will not be hiring approximately 40 people for this year. So there are 40 people in this community that are on either unemployment or other plans to sustain their livelihoods.
The loss of the cruise ship industry in Ketchikan certainly does affect the medical center, which might be a surprise to a lot of people. But certainly, we depend on increased business from cruise ship visitors for our operation.
It was a drastic 180. I mean, tourism is really a happy, fun job for the most part, right? Instead, I felt like I was kind of sounding this death knell of sorts every day.
So, due to the pandemic, I've been sitting here questioning. You know, this is the industry that I not only studied, but that I've worked in for over 10 years.
So when cruise ships shut down here in Ketchikan, it has wide-ranging implications for the entire community. It hurts our businesses, it hurts all the people that work for those businesses. It hurts our ability to pay our debt for our various projects that support this community. So, and all of that will affect the quality of life of our citizens on this island.
So the rippling effects, it's hard to get across the rippling effect of the immediate change that has taken place because of the COVID-19 epidemic, but it doesn't take long to recognize it as you drive downtown, as you see different businesses with a lot less activity, and it's just, I think the case can certainly be made that that coastal Alaska, and all of Alaska, but coastal Alaska has been impacted the most by COVID-19 compared to many other places, not only in the state, but also in all across the country.
For Ketchikan, the cascading consequences of COVID-19 don't end with the lack of cruise ships. Rather, that's also where they start. When tourism businesses aren't making money, their owners can't spend at non-tourism businesses. Without money coming in at nearly any business, workers are laid off. Without wages, workers don't spend either, and without anyone spending, even some non-tourism businesses are forced to close. Without the sales tax those businesses would normally bring in, the local government lacks the long-term resources to protect them or the newly unemployed workers, or even to maintain the school, fund the rec center, or support the hospital. A ripple effect, a downward spiral, whatever you call it, the impact is clear. Nearly every aspect of life in Ketchikan hangs on a precipice. With every additional day that their ports sit empty, the town is pushed closer and closer to collapse. There are plenty of numbers that can attempt to quantify the damage. $223 million lost, 3/4 of businesses at risk of closing, well over 1,000 jobs gone, but the numbers alone are far from enough to capture the full impact.
If I had to use one word to describe the pandemic's effect on this community, I guess it would have to be isolated. But that's just not the right word, and I wish I had a better one. Because you do feel kind of trapped. I guess isolated in that I'm a people person and I love interacting with people. Always, a nice handshake, a hug. I miss hugs, I really do. My wife's been out of town for 4.5 months. She's been down being a nanny granny to our grandson while my son and daughter-in-law try and work from home, or even when they get back to the office, they just don't feel comfortable putting back in daycare. So I don't get a lot of hugs with my wife out of town.
If I had one word to describe the impacts of COVID-19 on Ketchikan, my family, our Taquan Air, is devastation. And it's devastating even more so because we don't know when it will end. I've had to lay off people in our management team that are like family in this industry because we're passionate about what we do. And I've never, ever thought I'd see a day where I wouldn't know what tomorrow would look like, or how we would be able to say everything's gonna be okay and we'll all have a job tomorrow. And I can't say that.
If I had to pick one word to how I feel about this, fucking A would be right in there, but we probably can't put that in, so what would be another one? You've got to be kidding me. No, that's not one word. Really?
Very sobering, very concerned, recognizing immediately that all of these businesses that I have, that I am asked to represent, the schools, the different things, I just recognized, I had this feeling of sense of a very sobering thought that, this is gonna be a problem.
For the summer was hopelessness. I felt like hopelessness because it's certainly not gonna happen. Handwriting was on the wall in June, at the very latest in July. Just not gonna happen. There's that hopelessness. How am I gonna pay my rent? How am I gonna pay hired help if there's any? How am I gonna pay for the thousands of dollars I already spent to get the gifts here in the community? So there's that sense of hopelessness.
Anxiety.
Hopeless.
I think we're really uncomfortable, very scared.
The impact of COVID has just been devastating on the industry here.
I'll go with devastating. I would say a devastating impact on the community as a whole, for sure.
Southeast Conference puts out a regional business climate survey as part of our economic planning. Because the survey is structured to be statistically accurate from year to year and track-based questions, we always allow our respondents to, give us more information if they want to. So we provide the boxes for them to put in their thoughts that may not be directly answering a question, kind of give us some insights on, what they're really feeling as they go through this pandemic that we're faced with. And some of them were pretty tough. I mean, just to read off a few, one business says 100% decimated. I'm currently not operating and will likely lose or even have to close the business. I'm closed for 18 months. Closed for the season. I closed my business for 2020 and may never open again. It's a complete loss of tourism, devastated business. Devastated and confusion. I'm struggling with the weight of being a complete failure. I lost everything. The mental strength it will take to pull my business off the ground is just about as tough as I will be to find the financial resources to do the same. We're almost bankrupt. You can say COVID has ruined us. With a significant price drop, no fish, and increased regulations and costs, this will probably be the end after 50 years of fishing. We are shuttered for the first time in 123 years, and it's frightening. We are getting more support from local customers than normal at this time of year, but not nearly enough to make up for the tourism losses. We lost 99% of our customer base. We have no revenue this summer, as 100% of our customers come by cruise ship. We have lost all revenue for our summer business due to no cruise ships. We've gone from $700,000 in annual sales to none. We're at a standstill. 0 customers, 0 income. That's the voice of the businesses in Southeast Alaska.
Ketchikan has always sacrificed to keep its economy alive. In a part of the world where blue skies are scarce, they've given up their summers in exchange for congested streets, long hours, but stable income. Selling away Ketchikan's best months is by no means easy, and while it's a trade-off they're willing to make, the residents of Ketchikan have always wondered what it would be like to have a summer to themselves. Now, they're finding out.
We'll say last year, on today, there would be so many people in town, just everywhere. It's honestly dead in town without the cruise ships, and it's made a big impact.
When we went down to the docks and there was no ship in town, there was like a half a dozen people on the docks, which is about a half a mile, 3/4 mile in length, and you can count the people on the dock, 6, maybe 10. Something wrong here, okay? That's very unreal.
It's kind of eerie feeling to walk down the streets and really nobody be there.
Sidewalks are pretty quiet, and the sounds of cars are just, kind of slowly hit and miss. It's not the steady traffic that you would expect in a regular summer season. Airport is very quiet too, with reduced flights and reduced passenger numbers. So it's a different environment. And the rain, we've had a lot of rain this summer. So some of us are trying to cope with the fact that what the salmon love sometimes can be a little dreary and depressing, especially given the rest of what's going on.
Well, it's been depressing. If it wasn't bad enough, our summer weather hasn't been very good either. So people are getting punched twice here.
We get a lot of rain normally. We, sometimes 13 or 14 feet a year. But I think we're going to pass that this year, aren't we? I don't know what we're set to hit, but it's probably going to be some kind of record. I mean, we've had a lot of rain, a lot of wind.
We don't see the cruise ships coming in. We don't see the amount of airplanes coming in. You could go down and walk through the downtown area and you might encounter 10 people if you're lucky, and most of those will be locals. So it's truly like a nightmare.
A lot of us joked that it was like October here. And I think that's what most people would compare it to. It's either March or it's October. It's the vibe that we have in this town before and after the ships have come.
In the early days of American Alaska, winter was an ever-present threat. Without preparation, these 6 months were lethal, which meant that when you weren't in winter, you were getting ready for it. Summers were spent hunting, fishing, or growing food to stash away, and as soon as temperatures turned, Alaskans entered a state of hibernation. In today's more modernized Alaska, the threat of winter comes less from whether one has enough food, but rather enough money. Food fills the state's supermarket shelves year-round, but jobs, however, come and go. In the summer, Alaska buzzes with activity as the fishing, mining, and tourism industries reach their peaks. Over these 4 months, people stock their savings accounts, preparing for a winter where employment opportunities are leaner. Nowhere is that more true than in Ketchikan, where unemployment nearly triples in winter. Ideally, everyone ends September with enough money to sustain them until the following May. For the longest time, the arrival of tourists each spring was as certain as the arrival of spring itself. There was always a question of just how many would come, but no one could ever imagine that the answer would be 0. When May arrived, but cruise ships did not, last summer's savings started to get thin. June ate up the rest, and by July, there was simply no money. In August, it became utterly clear that there was no money, no jobs, and not even the potential for things to get better until May 2021. The financial winter, originally expected to last just 7 months, would now stretch for 19.
Since the business started growing so fast, we actually had to work on the business through the winter without any real income. So this winter, we're gonna have to figure out something to do, that's for sure.
Then I suppose this winter, usually to survive in Alaska and keep your sanity, we try to at least get outside a few times and see the sun. And unfortunately, probably a lot of people aren't going to be able to travel this year, with limited resources. So this winter might be pretty rough, and we'll have to all bond together to get through it.
I am concerned, and there are a lot of people in this community that are hurting otherwise. And I think the fact that there's not going to be any money circulating in Ketchikan in the winter is going to be a major problem.
When the United States first went into lockdown, many expected life to return to normal in about a week. Then 1 week became 2, then a month, then 2 months, 6 months, a year, and more until the estimates started to feel meaningless. Enduring this endless winter is one of the most difficult challenges Ketchikan has faced. Sacrifices are being made, dollars stretched, debt accumulated. The very notion of survival relies entirely on the promise of a strong summer season in 2021. For Ketchikan, the idea of one summer without cruise ships was unthinkable, but now they're forced to consider at least the possibility of it all happening again.
If we don't have a 2021 season, I think there will be a lot of concern across the board in our community, within the state. There's so many factors in and around the visitor industry and its impacts on our economy that would be very trying should we not have a season. I struggle every day with being optimistic and also being conservative in my thoughts about where we're headed. And I believe everyone does struggle with that. And of course, worst case scenario is no season next year. You'll have to come back and see me, talk to me then, I guess. It's almost unfathomable to think about losing, your economy for 2 years in a row. I'm sure it's happened other places. I sure hope we don't have to deal with it here.
So from an economic standpoint, it's very important for us to get the cruise ships back and tourism back next year. Because if we don't, we're going to start running out of reserves. And then it's going to significantly impact the quality of life of our citizens. We would be looking at massive tax increases, probably massive foreclosures, massive damage to our commercial real estate in our downtown core area. So it's extremely important that we get things back on track next year. And that's why we have to remain hopeful that we'll be able to do that.
We have to survive. I'm praying that next May 2021, we'll get cruise ships again. But to survive until then is going to be, it's going to be, we have our work cut out for us.
It's everything in 2021 to have a strong season.
Yeah, Ketchikan Outdoors will not look anything like it does now if we don't, and it may not even exist if we do not have a good season in 2021.
And are you worried?
I am not. I just finished my daily schedule for 2021, which consists of the amount of tours we're doing, what ships are in, and it's crazy busy. It's an awesome looking cruise ship schedule for next year. I think if we did half of what the cruise ship schedule is promising, I think we could make it.
In 1980, Ketchikan welcomed 63,000 visitors. In 2019, 1.2 million. That growth wasn't accidental. Decades of preparation, of advertising, of work made it so. It was all wiped out in a single year. Today, the prospect of a 2021 season brings hope, but no guarantees, forcing Ketchikan to face the fact that even their best-case scenario is still grim. Even if the cruise ships do return, they're not likely to bring the numbers the town spent so long working for.
And I think the big question is, what's the new norm going to be in terms of the ships coming back? Will they be in the same numbers they were? Will they be at the same capacity levels that they had been, which was typically full? Most ships were full and then some with visitors when they come on an Alaska cruise. So it's a big, wide unknown.
We're guesstimating maybe 50%, and then maybe not 50% based on some of the ships are going to be not as full. We think as some of the new protocols, the ships won't be as full as they have been. And probably not all the ships will be coming back right at once either.
I'm not sure that we're going to be able to rebound to the level where we were supposed to be this year.
I don't believe that we will receive 1,300,000 people as projected. I think that we'll be lucky if we get 1 million folks to Ketchikan.
No, I think they'll come back. They have to. There's too much money there. They'll come back.
Yeah, I suspect it will not be anywhere near the volume of prior years, but I'm hopeful that we can have a limited start, and maybe I feel there may be a 50-70% chance of a limited cruise season next year getting restarted.
For Ketchikan, the future is uncertain. Cruise ships may return in 2021. They also may not. Visitors may flock to Ketchikan in the same numbers as before. They also may not. One thing, though, is without question. The summer of 2020 is gone, and they'll never get it back.
No amount of money will give us back the memories that we've lost from this. No amount of money. You know what I mean?
One of the things that has crossed my mind a lot this summer, and that is, I'm 76. And I do know back when I was 67, my son said, "Dad, how much longer are you going to be giving the tours?" I said, I'm going to do the tours as long as I'm physically able to. Now, fast forward nearly 10 years, and I'm thinking, gosh, I'm not sure how much more time I have. And there's so much that I have stored in me to share with the visitor that wants to know that I experienced in life, as opposed to reading in the book and then passing it.
Ketchikan has faced extinction before. When mining dwindled, when salmon thinned, when logging left, the town looked certain to collapse. But it didn't, because what keeps Ketchikan's heart beating is not any one industry, but the people who over and over again have found a way to pivot, to innovate, to reimagine, to keep their small northern outpost alive. Ketchikan's strength was never in industries, but individuals. Not in companies, but communities. There's no way to know if this is the end of Ketchikan's fourth act or just a brief intermission. Either way, the people of Ketchikan don't seem cowed. It takes a certain type of cavalier defiance to live in Alaska in the first place, so perhaps it's not surprising that when confronting their darkest winter yet, the people of Ketchikan still find the light.
So after several months of being up and down, up and down. I would have to say that I'm more hopeful than I was yesterday, than I was last week.
I'm optimistic for the next year. You know, we have to have hope. There's a lot of hope in this community. And so I think that we're going to get to the point where at least by the middle of next year, we're seeing tourism pick up again, and then we'll get back on the right track.
Looking forward to 2021, I think it would be prudent to be only cautiously optimistic. I think that the only way we're going to see a return of a full-on cruise ship season anywhere close to the volumes we've had before is going to be an effective vaccine.
Optimistic, for sure, optimistic. Believe in the people of Alaska, believe in the community of Ketchikan, and believe that in the end, we will rebound stronger than where we are, where we were a year ago. I think it has caused the community to recognize what we have and to value what we have. And so I'm optimistic that we're gonna rebound and it'll be good again. It'll be a long road for us to get there though.
The word I would choose about the future of the industry is that resilience is what we can lean on.
I feel like people are hopeful. We've had a horrible summer. The weather with the pandemic, no tourism, it hasn't been a good summer at all for us. Summer 2020 has not done us justice. But I feel like people were, the beginning of this pandemic, 4 months ago, scared. Now people aren't as scared, they're hopeful. I mean, we gotta have hope. If we don't have hope, we don't have anything.
Hopeful.
I am very hopeful that this will be turned around come February or March.
Hopeful seems too strong. Ketchikan has survived great challenges. We like to say we're just really stubborn, and I think we'll survive this. Personally, I think that Ketchikan will come through this and be okay. Now, will it be the same as it was 2019? I don't know. If the cruise industry truly does continue to crater, I think Ketchikan will become a smaller community in a variety of ways. 3 words: it will endure. Ketchikan will be here.
For now, Ketchikan is waiting for a moment. They don't know when it will arrive, but they do know that with each passing day, it approaches. Perhaps not in May, perhaps not in June, perhaps not this year, but at some point, a small white dot will appear on the horizon. Slowly, it will take on shape. A hull, a bow, a deck, people. This small northern outpost will once again be a destination. And when that moment comes, they'll be ready.
I can view every cruise ship that comes to our community right from my home. A sense of joy will be in my heart as one sees my grandchildren when they're running around. There's a sense of joy to see them running around. There will be a sense of joy with all these brand new visitors coming, wanting to experience my part of Alaska that a lot of people my age take for granted. But the very first one that I promise that I will do, and that is, I will sing them a welcome song, Tlingit welcome song, which those that are on the dock could never do because they're not a Tlingit, just like me.
I'm hoping I'm looking at a dispatch and trying to plan how I'm going to do all this.
I'm keeping track of employees and telling them where to go, and it's fun. We have so much fun.
When the first cruise ship's gonna come back to Ketchikan, what is it gonna feel like? Oh my gosh. I already feel happiness inside. I feel a little, just thinking about, just talking about it. It's gonna be the biggest deal that probably since I bought the bar in '98, to me, just being that hope, knowing that it's gonna be okay. I mean, the relief, I will cry. There's not a doubt in my mind, Paula will have huge tears just when I hear that horn blowing, when it's coming in. Oh, I'll be out here with my megaphone. It'll be welcome, my island people. It'll be like the good old days. It will be like it's supposed to be, is how it will be. Because it's not how it's supposed to be right now, you guys, at all. It'll be better, it'll be good. I can't even say it, the feeling I'll have. And I feel a little bit of it in me right now, like, whoo, you know, whoo, 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 whoo. Oh, it's gonna be a humdinger. Bring it on, I'm ready. We're ready, we'll be ready. We'll be more than ready.